Today I get to share some footage of the Keeper of Memories workshop held by Alex Castro Fereirra, as well as a flip through of my finished book. Welcome, it's Barbara from Vienna, Austria. So in my previous video, I shared my preparations for this workshop and my thoughts going into it. So if you missed that, you can find that video linked below this video. As a reminder, this workshop is for creating a special altered book of your own personal story, a testimonial of our life and keeper of memories. And what you see here is the welcome package that we each found on our workspace when we started. How cool is that? So Alex included some beautiful vintage fabric and paper bits and coffee dyed papers. And Christine, who hosted the workshop in her art studio, also gave us each a piece of colorful canvas, which I will surely use in another project. Alex was very open about letting me film in the workshop, but of course I also don't want to give away too many of her workshop secrets or too much of her processes. I'm sure you will understand that. You can find the link to the online version of this workshop linked below this video. Also, be sure to check out Alex's website because she also has free online courses there as well as other workshops. You can find the link in the description box as well. Alex brought a few of her amazing books with her to the workshop and she calls them vintage scrapbooks, and I cannot even decide which one I love most. Each one is so unique and it was such a huge treat and so surreal to be able to touch and flip through them. So this footage is back home after the first half day. We put together these collages, which were mixtures of our laser copied photos, fabrics, Tim Holtz, cardstock, and vintage documents. We also added hand stitching onto our pages, most of which I did in the evening at home because there just wasn't enough time in the workshop. I felt quite stressed during that afternoon at the workshop because I was making my collage too detailed. Alex had mentioned that we should not think too much about what to add, but I found it difficult not knowing the full process and what the next steps would be. So basically being my usual control freak self. I repeatedly had to remind myself during these 4 days that it's a different process than I would normally have and that I need to trust Alex and her process. So I had 5 collage papers at this point, but decided to make one more the next morning at the studio. So this was the morning of day 2 and I managed to make one more collage paper. So I had 6 in total. We were encouraged to splatter alcohol ink on some of our collages, which was not easy for me at all, especially because these inks mostly soaked through to the other side of the collage and you never knew if you would get a splatter into the eye of someone on a photo. Again, a good lesson to just let go and trust the process. I really think I still need lots of those lessons. Next, we added our rusty objects and curcuma to our papers and folded them into a bundle, wrapped it into cloth and secured it with kitchen twine. Again, for me, it was a challenge to even fold those collages up because I liked them just the way they were. I didn't even want to make any creases into them. And here Alex is trying to fit all of our bundles into the pots to boil them in tea. It was so fun to see everyone's bundle and how different they already looked. By the way, we were 11 participants in total, and most of them chose to use random photos or images for this project. The cool thing about these art books is that you can do them with any theme, but I was so happy about the choice of the love story of my parents because it made my book so meaningful and it makes me smile every time I look at it now. So after they were boiled, Alex carefully took them out. How cool do these look already? We were of course wondering about the ones that had two totally different colors and learned that Alex had left some bundles in the water longer than others before she turned them around. That's something I would have never thought of because I would submerge the bundle completely instead of standing it up like that. And I was so happy that mine was one of the two colored ones because I thought it looked so cool and interesting. Then we very carefully and slowly unwrapped the bundles and placed the pages on some plastic on the floor to dry. As you can see, there were parts that had a lot of curcuma still on them, which I either gently rubbed away with baby wipes or took to the sink to rinse if the paper seemed like it could handle it. This whole part of unwrapping the collages was emotionally the most difficult, not just for me, but apparently for everyone, because of course, some of the papers and photos are torn at this point and you don't see all the faces anymore. So this is the part where you have to remind yourself that you are not creating a photo album, but an art book. I kept telling myself, trust the process. And I was super curious to see how they would look once they were dry. So here I filmed Alex unwrapping her bundle and you can see how delicate everything is and how easily they tear while pulling them apart. And this is what the floor looked like with all the boiled papers laid out to dry of all of the participants. Oh my goodness, so much yumminess. By the way, if you follow me on Instagram, you would have already seen some posts about this workshop already. So I would like to encourage you to check my Instagram account if you haven't already, because you get footage there that I don't always share on YouTube. This is day 3, and here we were finally at a part of the project where I felt at home, which was making clusters. But it was especially fun because Alex generously let us use some of her materials as well, such as dried palm tree bark, photo slides and negatives, stitched rusty fabric, lace, and so on. Also, some of the workshop participants brought vintage ephemera to share with everyone, which was such a treat. Generally, everyone was so kind and giving, and it was such an amazing experience to bond with like-minded creative people. It's such a different experience to creating at home alone. The sense of community and creative energy in such a space is so inspiring, and I really treasure the new friendships I was able to form there. So if you ever have the chance to participate in an in-person workshop, No matter what it is, please do it, and I'm sure you will create memories and form friendships you will cherish for a lifetime. You will see the journal in detail in its completed state at the end of this video, but here I just wanted to show you the status after day 3. Alex makes one signature only for her book, but I, as well as some of the others, decided to make more signatures. I decided on 3 signatures, which I then decided to change at 3 in the morning because I didn't like how they looked with the binding. So here on day 4, I'm adding more of the photos on top of the collages, and I really like the contrast between the really grungy background and the clean looking photos on top of some of those pages. And at the end of the workshop, we all put our books on the table, and look how amazing and different they all turned out. If this is not eye candy, then I don't know what is. And finally, I asked my dear friend Honey if she would share a flip through of her book. You're welcome. Honey specifically sends her warmest regards and hugs to all of you. I will link Honey's Instagram below so you can follow her and see some photos of her finalized pages once she has time to complete them. So please enjoy her flip through of her beautiful book. She used random vintage photos, and she will be adding a lot more to her pages. And here's a group photo we took at the end with all of us holding our books. Honey is the blonde one in the middle and Alex is the one to her right. So it's the day after the workshop and here is my pretty much completed book. I am so happy with it. It's so different from any of the other journals I've made and it just makes me smile, as I've mentioned before. This cover is definitely more plain than I would usually create, but I think it really works because there's so much going around it. So we have this very elaborate binding and we have all these yummy paper and fabric bits peeking out from all of the sides. So I think if the cover would have been very full, it would have just been too much. And this way, I think it's a beautiful contrast. We have this more simple cover and then we have all of this yumminess going on around it. So as you can see, in the end, I decided to use this book cover, which was the notebook from my father. I added the pencil with my mom's maiden name engraved on it here, which I glued on the cover and then added 2 pieces of wire. And this metal R is something that I found at a thrift store last year. And I specifically wanted the R because of my last name. So this was my maiden name. This lock here was from Alex's treasure. I'm so happy with that, and this little key was from one of the participants, Mirella. And as a last minute decision, I decided it also needed a little wire dragonfly on top. And this is the only original photo I used. This was really difficult for me to cut and to glue on, but I wanted the original photo. So this is my parents at their wedding. So here you can see I changed the book to only have 1 signature, which I'm really happy about. And then this here is the back. I originally planned on only having the black cover, but Alex said it's too boring, too plain, and offered for me to use this beautiful vintage French book cover. At first I thought, well, this is the only piece that actually does not fit to my theme because everything else is German and from Austria, because I wanted everything to work with the story of my parents. But then Honey had a good point. She said, well, this is the part from the workshop. So since this is from Alex and this book was made in the workshop, this is the one piece that is not necessarily from the story, but from the workshop. And I really embraced that idea. As you can see, this cover moves, and this was something I really struggled with at first and I had to get used to. But again, this was one of the things where I told myself, embrace that this is different. Embrace that this is not what you would usually do, because otherwise, what's the point of going to a workshop if you're going to keep doing the things you already do anyway? So I was really open to trying a new style of binding and to see if I would like it. So see, this is not something I would usually ever go for, but in this case, it works for me. It's part of the project and it's growing on me every day. So this, as you can see, is the inside of the cover. So this was my mom. I think this was a photo of getting ready for her first ball. This is some of my dad's handwriting, the one I showed you in video 1. That was actually in this book when I found it. A dried flower I had found, which I just stapled on. And you know, things like here. At first, when you see this, after you unpack the bundle, you might think, oh my goodness, the photo is ruined. This here is from a rusty piece and it's going right through her eye. But actually, this is beautiful. I love that it turned out like this and it just gives it so much character. As I mentioned before, I love the contrast of the more clean photo look and then the grunged up ones from the collages. I added some stamps here as well. Here you see some stitching. I like the pop of color. Here you can see the alcoholic ink that I added. Love it. And I love that some of the pages have that and some of them don't. These pieces here with the red stitching were from Alex. I did also add some machine stitching in the evening at home. We were also encouraged to print some of the photos on acetate, which I'm really happy about. Here again, some stitching. This is one of the clusters that you saw me make. Again, I'm thinking that there's a tear here. At the first moment, I was shocked to see this, but now I really love it. So I added some of the collages on the edges of the paper. Again, you see here some acetate, and some of the photos in here are repeated throughout the pages, which I'm really liking because they look different on each page, and the state of the photo is also different on each page. Really like this one as well. This here was part of the book spine. Here we see some stitching. This is some rust-dyed fabric that I had before. We have some Tim Holtz paper. We have an original nib of a pen, which I received from my friend Petra. This was an original slide, which I managed to take apart by putting a craft knife carefully in between the two cardboard pieces. And I took out the original slide and I added one of my acetate photos of my parents. So this is super cool. I added one of my dried hydrangeas and some other leaves. Tim Holtz paper, some of Alex's beautiful grungy fabric with stitching. Again, this doily was from Alex. These here, which you will see on some of the pages, are fabric pieces that came from the wrapping from the bundle. And I stamped them with Field Notes Tim Holtz stamps. And these are what I had on the 3 signatures at first. But since I now only have 1 signature, I had 2 signatures that still had these on the front and the back. And I decided to leave them on because I think they add some really cool interest as well. Again, another beautiful picture of my mom before that ball. Some more stitching, a lot of grunginess. These here are my grandparents. I added another dried flower and I stitched over this hole. And as you can see, I also used a lot of stapling, a lot more than I would normally do. Here we have some of this super cool palm tree bark. And I've already asked hubby to bring some more palm tree bark from Egypt. I'm not sure it's the right time of year. He says they're all kind of green at the moment, but let's see what he can come up with. Again, some acetate. Love it, love it, love it. Then I added some more stamps. These are from Finnebear. So this one says Own Your Story. And this is just a piece of that bundle that you saw in the photo earlier. Some more acetate. This whole piece here is again from Alex. This says Dream Without Fear and was obviously the wedding of my parents. Love this rust here. This one here says Moment, and here's another piece that Alex gave us. And I think she said this is actually Tim Holtz, so maybe you're able to find this online. This here is some of the watercolor dyed paper, but this one is the one from Alex, which she has also stamped, as you can see. Another piece from Alex here. Some original handwriting from my grandmother, which was on the back of this photo that I cut off here. All of this here is the alcohol ink. I had a pretty big tear here, so I reinforced that with masking tape. Some more stitching, some more of Alex's fabric, and I just love how that goes right through the face of my dad. Such a cool effect. Some more stitching that I've done. This is so cool. So this is one of my favorite photos of my mom. And when I made this cluster, I randomly took a piece of paper from those technical papers and added it to this collage. And then later I realized that my mom was 17 in this photo. I mean, look at this. How do these things happen? Then I added Sentiment Make Room for Your Voice here, and I added a feather that I found on one of my walks. This is some of that vintage map paper that I showed you in video 1, and some Tim Holtz wallpaper, and some very, very yummy coffee dyed paper, again from Mirella, who was one of the participants. Love this. Again, that photo of my grandparents. You see how it looks different here than it did in the front. Same photo here. but just having it like this, turning it and cutting it in a different format just makes it look different. More Tim Holtz, more of Alex's beautiful fabric. Love this photo of my mom. Here we have this image again of my mom, and it says, "Find your balance." This is again this beautiful fabric. I didn't want to do much to that. I just added this skeleton leaf. Here I left it completely plain. Again, some of the acetate collage. A completely torn up photo of my mom's graduation class. My mom is whole, she's the one here, and I just love how it looks. And this stamp is one of my handmade tree stamps. More stitching, more fabrics and doily from Alex. This one is also very, very beat up. I stitched some of the tears with my sewing machine. More palm tree bark. This was a piece from Alex that she had stitched. Some of my stitching here. Again, I love how this turned out. This was one of those old cards of Vienna. More handmade stamps. Alex also gave us each a piece of this paper that says, "I am enough, I am priceless, I am, I am, I am." Yeah, the rest is cut off. A really fun idea for a journal as well. This piece of acetate came out really strange, but I really, really love it. And that's the last page, and here's the inside back cover onto which I stitched a tree. So I think I will add some more stitching. I'm so happy with it. The thing that I find really challenging now is how to store this, because I cannot stand this upright in my bookshelf because it would ruin all of these papers here. So this is definitely a book that needs to lay on top of a shelf on display. So that's what I'm going to do. Thank you so much, Alex, for this amazing and fun workshop. Thank you so much, Christine, for being such a gracious hostess in your beautiful art studio. Hugs and kisses to all of my old and new friends who attended the workshop. And I hope you had fun joining me in this process. So this now gets a very special place here on my bookshelf with vintage goodies. And it sits right here between my vintage typewriter and my boxes with book parts and vintage postcards. And then I want to share one more very special work of art I received from my new friend Mirella from the workshop. Look at this beautiful piece of art here. Mirella made this collage, and you can see there's a spoon there with a photo inside. She learned the technique from Alex, so this is one of the free workshops that Alex offers. And I love having this on my wall in my craft room. Thank you again so much, Mirella. This makes me so happy. Love you guys. Mwah, mwah.